It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. I really like that song. And it's a shame because I see that it's playing, but I don't actually get to hear it because otherwise it'll go through the mic and it'll do feedback and whatever. But I really like it. I think my lights are too bright. Okay, whatever. Good morning. Hi. Today's August 6th. You are watching Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins, and I want to welcome you. It's great to have you here. Every night I scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native and other nifty little bits of interestingness. And I come here in the morning and I share it with you. It's a curated list of content. I go through around 200 submissions every night, and I select around 10 of them for the next day's show. And last night I actually cut a lot of stuff. Because if I wouldn't use it, I won't be talking about it. But last night I discovered that there's another criteria, which is if I can't talk about it intelligently, then... well, I don't want to just come here and be like, there was a new release, and there was a new... it's got to be more fun than that. So I had to cut some other stuff last night. But we're left with some really cool stuff today, and if you saw the tweets from last night, there was a little play on words thing there, and that's the tool of the day. But we'll get to that. Thank you all for coming. If you're watching now or in the future, please click the thumbs up button on the video so the YouTube algorithm shares it with other people. And yeah, let's get started. I don't remember how to get started. I need more coffee. We only have a half an hour. I think today we're probably going to have plenty of time as I don't have a lot of stuff to share, but we might get bogged down at the end. Good morning, Sebastian. Ariel, good morning. Ariel, I sent you a message on Slack last night. I didn't see if you responded yet, but if you didn't see that, please check that. Morning, Marcel. Devin, hello. Thank you for joining. And Nuno and Peter. And Wojtek, cześć Wojtek. I had a bunch of people from Poland follow me on Twitter last night, and I was wondering if you had anything to do with that. If not, just take credit for it anyway. All right. So we've got... I'm going to switch back to my main camera here. So we've got this thing called Kubernetes, right? And honestly, even though I work in the marketing department at Rancher, I'm an engineer. I think it's a shame that we all have to fight over Kubernetes. We're like, my Kubernetes is better than your Kubernetes, and his Kubernetes totally sucks. And it's so lame because Kubernetes by itself is an amazing, powerful, universe-changing piece of technology that we are all so privileged to be sitting smack in the middle of. But the truth of the matter is, that's what you have to hear because that's what's out there. So it's important that you have access to resources that allow you to decide what's right for you. People come to me and they're like, Adrian, what's the best whatever? What's the best Kubernetes? What's the best management thing? What's the best flavor of Linux? And what's best for me may not be what's best for you. I can tell you why it's best for me, but it's like the car that I drive isn't necessarily the right car for you to drive, or the right car for, the family of 12 to drive, or whatever. You have to look at the criteria, and it's difficult to do that when you're being bombarded by so much noise. StackRox pops up. So they have a lot of secondary content related to what they do without necessarily making it promotional for what they do. And they release a little short article every month about the features and benefits with the 3 large hosted Kubernetes solutions, EKS, AKS, and GKE. If you're looking for, listen to me, I sound all slang. If you're looking for the place to go, if you're looking for succinct information, if you're trying to figure out, well, what's the difference between GKE and EKS, for example, this just has some really great info. So you can see they've got a little table here that tells you which version of Kubernetes is default versus where they are in the chain for what's the current stable, comparing it to Kubernetes itself. And then they go on to talk about what changes might have come between the last monthly update and this one about, or with secondary stuff. So what container runtime engine do they support, or what other secondary features for load balancing and stuff like that. The August version just came out yesterday, and I will have a link to this in the video description. more Litmus. Today it's actually pretty simple. They're having an online meetup. And if you're in APAC, which is Asia Pacific, or if you're in the Middle East, then this probably applies more to you than it does for me, because it is on Saturday, August 22nd, and it is at 1:30 a.m. in the time zone that New Delhi is in. Sorry, it's at 11 a.m. in the time zone that New Delhi is in. It's at 1:30 a.m. for me. Annoying. But I might catch it afterwards. Yeah, I'll be asleep. Thinking of chaos engineering. I like the stuff that Litmus is doing. I don't mean to talk about them so much on the show, but they're putting out content, they're putting out updates, they've got meetups, they've got stuff going on. They're a CNCF sandbox project. What do we say at the end of every part when I don't know what else to say? There you go. All right, so I'm gonna switch back and forth between the things in my camera to do like little intros for stuff, because I realized yesterday that I spent a lot of time with you just looking at the browser and me in that little tiny window. Where is it? It's over here. Little tiny window. Next is a bot for Slack. I almost didn't include this because I'm like, like, do I really want like to be bombarded with notifications about deployment? Anyway, it's a bot for Slack. I did include it because it is actually, it's cute and it's useful, as you'll see in just a moment. It's got a backend that you run in your cluster, and then you can, it's got a backend that you run in your cluster, and then a bot front end that hangs out in Slack that you push your event data to, and it, well, it gives you notifications. Now, even though it's a Slack bot, it'll work with Mattermost. It can push stuff to other channels. It's just a Slack bot by name because Slack is the big IRC dog in the room. It can monitor stuff. You can use it for debugging. You can get alerted on anomalous activity, like pods being restarted, or you can get a lot of information, probably to a dedicated Slack channel, just because the problem with sending lots of notifications is it just rapidly becomes noise. And if you're bombarded by noise, even if there's signal in the middle of it, it's just annoying. And so you tune it out. You block it. You put it in a dedicated channel and you never look at it. You send it to an email folder that you never look at. And that defeats the purpose of why we have this information coming to us in the first place. So while you may be inclined to accept the defaults and be like, I'm just going to send it all, probably not what you want to do. One thing that it can do that I thought was pretty neat, and it's actually ultimately what caused me to include it, is that you can actually control, well, not control, but you can send kubectl requests to the bot, to the cluster. So you can actually like get information. It's read-only. They're very clear about that unless you specifically give it the power to do more. But you can pull information back by sending the bot commands in Slack. They claim that like, it's faster than firing up a terminal and logging into the cluster. But I have, like, on my standard workspace, I have a 27-inch Thunderbolt display here that you can't see. There's a browser, there's a terminal, there's like a space for whatever else I happen to be working on. Sometimes the whole screen is VS Code. And then I have another screen over here on my actual laptop that has like secondary stuff that I check periodically. Buried underneath that is email. So for me, the difference between, buried underneath that is Slack. So for me, the difference between like doing it in Slack and doing it over here is negligible. But for some people who might be in Slack but not logged in, or for those people who don't use a terminal all day long, well, it's kind of neat. And it's free. And so, you know, why the heck not? There was an article written up yesterday in Linux Advise, which is how I discovered it, that talks more about, you know, the bot itself and actually step-by-step of how to set it up. There's a company called Kasten, and they have a tool called K10 that's for doing backup and stuff. And I want to get K10 onto the show, but I haven't spent any time really hands-on with it, and it's a pretty big thing. So I'm holding back on that. However, yesterday someone suggested that I look at Kanister, which at first I thought was just a tool for backing up data. It's either part of the K10 suite or it's made by Kasten. I'm not really sure what the relationship is there. It's definitely also made by Kasten, but I don't know how it relates to K10 itself. And so I first looked at it and I was like, it's another tool for backing up data. Like, what's special about it? But then on closer inspection, it looks like it's something a lot smarter. So you know how operators take operational, like operators, Kubernetes operators, which I've been talking smack about all week, but everything's an operator these days, so anyway. So you know how operators take operational knowledge of what's going on how to like deploy and manage an application in a Kubernetes cluster, and then they make it available so you can just like stamp it out across the cluster and you don't have to necessarily know the details of what you're doing, which I hate that, but that's the situation that we're in today. A lot of people are being told to go deploy Kubernetes. This Kubernetes thing is great, make it happen in our environment, without having the experience to necessarily do it. So there's a lot of copy and pasting going on. So to be fair, tools like operators help people use Kubernetes successfully without necessarily making, the fumblings of knowledge. Can we call it that? The fumblings of knowledge? I like that. So the flip side of that, the danger is when people think that they actually do understand stuff because they're like, oh yeah, that was easy, and then it falls apart and they don't know how to fix it. So be careful when you're rolling things out from blog articles and other things like that, that you also take the time to understand what you're doing. Like getting there fast. It's like you're in two places. Like your experience is lagging behind, even though the output is ahead. Well, Kanister does kind of, I totally went on a rant. Kanister does the same kind of operator thing, but for data management. And data management, I originally thought was just a nice way of saying backups. But they do more. So you can create blueprints, and the blueprints can define how to do things with Kubernetes workloads that have data. So this can be databases, Mongo, Postgres, MySQL. It could be anything that has data. Probably could even be like a persistent volume or a content store or something. And then there's whatever you might need to do to that data, you can define in the blueprint. And what I really liked is this piece right here. You see, I just highlighted that in the middle. They have a community knowledge bank. This is open source. So if you don't want to figure out how to write a blueprint to make a backup of Postgres to S3, there's probably a blueprint that already does it. You just break it down, check it out, make sure it's not going to rm-rf your cluster, and then you can deploy it. So you have an accelerator now, and you can find blueprints for complex data management functionality and just start using them. So you might be using something that is more complicated, and so they've got the resources available for it. That's actually pretty cool. I showed you a couple days ago. I have a cron job running in my home cluster that like dumps my SQL, and then I have the Borg backup, the Borgmatic job that comes along every so often and like backs up all of the everything and puts it somewhere else. I could replace that with this, and it would be more cloud native. It would be more done by the CRDs instead of having actual applications that I have to write with logic. And if I want to do that for Postgres, then I do it. This is a much better solution. The one thing that I couldn't figure out from reading in their documentation last night is how it does scheduling. I'm assuming that any tool that does backup type stuff, data management, well, it has to be able to do that on an interval. Like I want to be able to say, yeah, back this up nightly. I don't want to have to remember or set up like another external thing and be like, yes, at 4 a.m. run this thing. But I couldn't find it in the docs. I looked for the word scheduling, I looked for time, I looked for all sorts of stuff, and I couldn't find it. If you use this, or if anybody from Kasten is watching, and you can quickly tell me in the comments or hit me up on Twitter how this does scheduling, then I think it'll be a great all-round kind of perfect solution. A couple weeks ago, I went nuts over ObjectiveFS. I'm going to pause there and check the chat. Oh, I have a new iPad Pro. I finally got one of the shipments that's been sitting in customs for 6 weeks. And in it was an iPad Pro, which I now have as like a secondary screen over here. It was on an iPad mini before. So I have an iPad Pro. So I have this beautiful, I can see the chat without going, eh. Sylvina, hello. Justin says, if Adrian's in marketing, there's a marketing person I see favorably. Thank you. I'm like a marketing imposter. I'm the voice of technology in our marketing department, but ultimately I'm an engineer. I just want everybody to use all of this stuff because it's just all so cool. But I want you to use whatever's right for you. Peter asks about my honest opinions about OpenShift and the way that they implement Kubernetes. Red Hat employs really smart people. Like, you can't look at Red Hat and be like, they don't know what they're doing. But it comes back to what I said before. The solution that's right for you is the solution that's right for you. Now, granted, I work for Rancher. I think that Rancher has a fantastic solution, and I would be a fool if I said anything else. But within an organization, no solution is perfect. OpenShift has problems. Rancher's solution has problems. Everybody's solution has problems. The problems are fixable, for one, and everybody's trying to do the best that they possibly can. But ultimately, the outcome of that, OpenShift, for certain people with a certain set of needs, is probably a great solution. And you can verify that because it's in a bunch of different places. Lots of people are using it. So it fits the needs of lots of people. Rancher fits the needs of lots of people too. And so does Kubler, and so does, I don't know, there's a bunch of different things out there, all of which are designed to ultimately do the same thing, manage Kubernetes clusters. But it comes down to what you need and what the right solution is for you. But more importantly, the thing that I care most about is not which solution you choose. It's that you watch out for watch out for organizations who want to own you, who get you started using their solution, and then they hook you on all sorts of proprietary, non-standard stuff that you become addicted to and that you bake into your applications, and now you can never leave. If at some point in the future, even if the relationship with the vendor never sours, but you want to just do something else that they don't do, well, you're cooked. You're done. You can't leave without feeling more pain than what it costs for you to stay. That's, in my opinion, unforgivable. So that just burned up all of my time that I could talk in the chat. Wonder if it supports. Devin says, I wonder if it supports Discord too. Oh, probably talking about KubeBot. Yeah, I don't know. We should find out. It seems like it would. I mean, Discord has an open communication. So Elasticsearch, communication channels. Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have to find that out. All right. Hey, good evening from India. Hi, Tej. Trick says, operators give you the benefit of the knowledge without learning it the hard way. Yeah, they do. There's nothing's free. You gotta pay for it somewhere. I was trying to find somewhere to go with that, but I don't want to turn this into Adrian's philosophical rant. All right. So I went nuts about ObjectiveFS, and I found yesterday that they have a Docker volume plugin. Hooray! So this goes through the installation on Red Hat or Debian-based systems, and then it's followed by 3 different ways that you can create and mount an OFS file system into a container. And that's great if you're using Docker. But, oh, did somebody just say, what's Docker? Did I hear that? What if you're using Kubernetes? Well, not everyone's using Kubernetes. You would be surprised how much content I still find out there for Docker Swarm. The other day, I found people were advertising for a webinar on, are containers just a trend or are they the future? I'm not kidding. As much, like, we live in this world, so we think that this is what the world is and that everybody else knows about Kubernetes and stuff. Dude, I'm telling you, there's so much opportunity. There are so many companies out there who have yet to modernize their infrastructure, who have yet to really explore containers. They're on the backside of that Gartner hype cycle where it's like it's really, really got to be proven and established and stuff before they jump on board. And they're a huge swath of the marketplace. So Docker's, yeah, there are still people out there doing stuff with Docker. We need to get them over to Kubernetes. It's our job. And then I found, oh, what? There's an ObjectiveFS FlexVolume Driver for Kubernetes that came out, I'm not kidding. Well, came out. They started posting stuff up to it 29 days ago, but they did an initial release 3 days ago. Yay! It's actually just a shell script that, I mean, it's a FlexVolume driver, but it's a shell script that bridges between OFS and Kubernetes so that you can mount OFS volumes into your pods. This guy works for Alta Languages. Alta Languages, I don't have the tab open for them. They're a company that provides language and cultural solutions for businesses, governments, and nonprofits. Which is a nice cross-section of the marketplace, I suppose. And they not only use Kubernetes, but they use ObjectiveFS. How cool is that? They're a language assistance company for governments, and they're running Kubernetes and OFS. Anyway, it's a nicely written shell script. It handles all this stuff for you. They've got examples on how to make stuff work. Now, oh yeah, so there you go. I think that's just going to be like the tagline for the show. Coffee and Cloud Native with Adrian Goins. There you go. Oh, the next one. This is another one that I almost didn't include because it seemed to overlap with a lot of other stuff that we talk about, and I wasn't sure when I first started looking at it what its scope was. But then I started looking at it, and here it is. So it must be interesting. Ultimately, it's an HTTP router. It says right there, it's an HTTP router and reverse proxy for service composition. That told me basically nothing. But this got my attention. It's able to handle more than 300,000 HTTP route definitions with detailed lookup conditions and flexible augmentation of the request flow with filters. Basically, that means it can handle over 300,000 route definitions that require processing, with such processing possibly being intensive, which means it's built for speed. So I went and looked at who this was built by, and it's actually the people at Zalando. I won't show their website, but they're a big online e-commerce site for clothing and shoes and all things related to stuff that I don't buy. I wear Rancher hoodies. There you go. This is my wardrobe. But they have stores and sites all over the world, so clearly if they're fronted by this, and they explain that later on, they've got a lot of stuff going through it. It sounds fast. You can use it as an ingress controller if you want, or you can use it behind an ingress controller. They call it to route traffic to your skipper fleet. So you can have an ingress controller that just makes basic decisions, and then you can send it to something that's able to handle much faster routing across microservices or other destinations. It can act as an authentication proxy. Thought that was interesting. If you're not using an API gateway, you could use this to secure access at the edge of a Kubernetes cluster with either basic auth or OAuth. Periodically, I run into that as a challenge where there's somebody who has a site on Kubernetes, but they don't want to put all of the authentication into all of the pieces. They need something that fronts it, and you're not going to get that with just a stock ingress controller. So, Nuno just said Darth Adrian. This thing is so ratty. It's all falling apart. I have a new one in the mail. You guys distracted me. Right, so authentication in front of other stuff. And they have a sample of their, all right, so this talks about how to deploy it. And yeah, so then you can see they've got their own little simple configuration language for how to actually configure it. And they give examples. It looks like you can be up and running with it really fast. If you need something that's fast for that kind of routing, and now we're on to the tool of the day. The tool of the day is, I'm going to call it for today, it's actually the cool of the day, because it's not really a tool. It's earlier this week. Whenever I do these things, I try to find something that makes you go like, what? What is this? And earlier this week, I had a throwback to 2015 when somebody ported Doom to Docker. And this popped up on the radar again a couple of days ago, and I was like, oh, I'm going to totally talk about that, because it was so awful and so awesome. And I was going to be like, oh, let's get this into Kubernetes. How do we make this happen? But it was one of the ones that got punted to the next day because I ran out of time. And I went back to put it into Tuesday's show, and it was gone. I'd bookmarked it, but whoever runs that page, I guess they exceeded their bandwidth on their little VPS, and so they pulled it. And that's a shame, because it was cool. Even just for nostalgia's sake, it was cool. But yesterday, we were gifted with Quake in Kubernetes. somebody out there, several somebodies, it appears, who have way too much time on their hand, ported Quake 3 to JavaScript so that you can actually play it in the browser. And then somebody else took the Quake JavaScript piece, embedded it into a Quake server engine, and then built a whole structure for that to run inside of Kubernetes. Basically, you can just fire this up. Their examples say that you can fire it up on just like a kind Kubernetes server. You can run it in K3s. I was able to get it installed last night, but because I'm in the middle of nowhere, they are using the default HTTP timeouts for Go, which are 10 seconds. So when my system, even running it locally here, first the server fires up and it reaches out to the internet to pull down some assets. And if those requests take longer than 10 seconds, it cuts them, which was, it's a bug. I'm going to open an issue. It was just too late. I lost like an hour last night trying to get this thing up and running because I wanted to actually show you guys. Yeah, so I couldn't get it running locally. I was able to get it up and running in my cluster out in DigitalOcean, but then I ran into the same problem in reverse, where connecting from here to DigitalOcean and pulling the assets down took longer than 10 seconds. And even though it cached it and it would refresh and it would pick up at the same place, I was literally sitting here for 45 minutes, like every 10 seconds, reloading the page until I finally got it all, and then it didn't quite work. And I ran out of time to troubleshoot it. It looks like it works. Lots of people are saying that it works. It looks like it's just hilarious and fun, and you can run this locally and play, JavaScript Quake arena battles with your coworkers, or even in a work from home environment. You can play it with your wife, your kids, whatever. Play it over Zoom. It looks great, but I couldn't get it to work. I will continue to try to get it to work. If any of you fire this up, I'm betting if you're in a place that has reliable bandwidth, it'll just come up and work fine. So if that's the case, please let me know in the comments. Let me know on Twitter, send me a screenshot, blow some stuff up in my name. And it's actually pretty feature rich. You can sideload maps. You can, all of the Quake 3 content that exists out there, you can load into it. It's a fully fleshed, open source Quake 3 server with the JavaScript Quake client that you just pull directly from it. Definitely the cool of the day. We have just a couple more minutes for me to check the chat. This is like a low-key kind of stream today. So what do we got? Devin says there's an open PR for Discord, not supported yet. Let's all go and thumbs up that, because I think everybody should support Discord in all of their communication media. It's just such a great platform. Yeah, Peter says that vendor lock-in is a big concern. Vendor lock-in is a huge concern. And nobody is... Remember, all of the companies exist to make money. Even Rancher's products are open source. But if we just gave everything away for free and we never charged for anything, then we wouldn't be a company. So we give away the products, and then we have an enterprise subscription for support and a bunch of other value-add services around the products themselves. But we want the products to stay free. But even Rancher falls victim to vendor lock-in because we also provide a way to do stuff. We want to give you the most flexibility, but if you start out on Rancher, you can't just lift that and shift to OpenShift. You can't take some of your Kubernetes clusters with you. The same way that you can't take an OpenShift cluster and bring it to something else. So you're never going to be completely free of vendor lock-in. One of the things that I very much like about Rancher, and I work at Rancher not because I needed a job. I am diehard, tried and true. I have Rancher tattoos on my chest almost, because they, in my opinion, have the most dedication to the community, to the users. For example, giving you the ability to import Kubernetes clusters from anywhere that you deploy via any means whatsoever. And if you import a cluster and later you decide, I don't want to use Rancher anymore, we have instructions on how to uninstall the Rancher components, and you can take your cluster with you. And we want you to be able to do that. For me, what that means is the value of the product is in the product. It's not in how well can we hook you. So it's not Once somebody has you hooked, well, they don't have to continue to innovate. They don't have to continue to do things. They don't even have to pay attention to you, because where are you going to go? And that's a bad relationship. And I don't care how much money a company might make off of that in like the karmic state of the universe. It's just not nice. I want to not only treat people well in my life, but I want everything that's in my life to also, and Rancher, I can tell you, they treat people well. They treat their customers well. They treat their users well. They treat their employees well. It's hands down the best place I've ever worked. And I even, like, it's even better than my own company that I ran for 14 years. Rancher is just amazing. And I'll stop ranting. Chaos testing. Yeah, the Doom thing that I was going to show was about chaos engineering. So you were like running around on the map and you'd see your Docker containers and you'd shoot them and they'd blow up. And I thought that would be easy to port to Kubernetes. Gone. David's going crazy on the Quake. The Quake is great. I was really disappointed that I couldn't get it up and running last night. Oh my gosh, it's 8:01. All right. Justin says that Rancher is, he says in his opinion, Rancher is closer to the core Kubernetes philosophy, less opinionated, less tightly coupled. I agree. All right, we can continue talking about all this. If you want to continue this conversation, you guys can always find me on the Rancher users Slack. Well, not always, but I am there all the time and I check in and out periodically throughout the day. Today's a bad day because I've got the intro to Kubernetes training coming up this afternoon that I'll be preparing for. But you know what? Let's get out of here because otherwise I'm just going to keep talking. So, of course, all of the links to everything you saw today will be in the video description and the Git repo within about 30 minutes of the show ending. If you follow me on Twitter, you get a notification when that happens. If you have something that you would like me to consider for the show, hit me up and let me know. Many of you are doing that, and thank you for that. My contact details are in the video description, or you can tweet with the hashtag CNCN, and I'll pick it up. If I mentioned a tool that you used, tell me in the comments. And of course, please, if you liked what you saw today, click the like button, subscribe to the channel, click the little bell to get notifications when the next show starts. I will be here every weekday talking until we run out of time. We were going to end early, and look at this. I can't talk. More coffee, more talking. I really love that you guys are here. This is a great way for me to start the day. Have a great day. Keep learning. I will see you in the next show. Bye.